I think I've bent me tube.
So, Wallace and Gromit Curse of the Were-Rabbit is now 20 years old, having come out in October 2005. And whilst we've already done a full video on how great that movie is, today we're actually going to be looking at a series of shorts directly tied to the movie's production history. Basically, we're going to be ranking all of the Wallace and Gromit shorts. Now, when you hear Wallace and Gromit shorts, what you probably have in mind is the shorter main movies. That, of course, being A Grand Day Out in 1989, The Wrong Trousers in 1993, A Close Shave from 1995, and A Matter of Loaf and Death, a casual 13 years later. And that's understandable to think. Those are shorter than the two feature films, and all of them were nominated for Best Animated Short at the Oscars, but it's not actually what we're looking at today. Doesn't matter if they are like 48 minutes long or something. Because you see, beyond the main franchise entries, there are many charming bits of Wallace and Gromit media that are the definition of short. So what better way to train a large team of animators than by assigning them a series of shorts to see if they could capture the look and the spirit of Wallace and Gromit before the big leagues. And considering they were all strong enough for public release, it certainly looks like they passed, and so were brought on for the team of Wallace and Gromit Curse of the Were-Rabbit. But today I thought I'd just go through the cracking contraption shorts, as well as any other relevant Wallace and Gromit shorts and commercials around that bubble. And no, the entire 18 years of 5-minute Shaun the Sheep episodes do not count in this, spare me. Kind of feels weird to include the commercials in the first place in this list, but the thing with Aardman is that even the ads that they pull out are fully produced claymation shorts in their own way, as we will soon see. So up first we have The Story of Aardman, continuity skits. Now, I've just put these under one umbrella because they're all continuity pieces throughout the 2016 Aardman documentary by the name of The Story of Aardman. The documentary as a whole is just fantastic, and you can find it on YouTube, depending on your region, of course. Really, I feel like somehow every British person has been exposed to this. They play it on loop every Christmas. And having Wallace and Gromit's presence with these silly little gags definitely adds the authenticity of that Aardman identity. However, what maybe pulls this one down to the bottom of the list is that this is clearly earlier days in Ben Whitehead's tenure voicing Wallace. This was at a point where he'd only just taken over, but Peter Sallis was still alive. Case in point, he's in this documentary.
Guess what's next, lad? Eh? Oh, stop fooling around.
And I think it's fair to say that this was at a time where he was clearly still doing an impression of Wallace, as opposed to actually playing Wallace. You know what I mean? Like, in Vengeance Most Foul, he is absolutely playing Wallace with a performance that fully sealed his take on the character. It is a clear shift away from these clips from almost 10 years ago, when he was still finding his footing. And that's okay. But the end result is just a very benign, unemotive version of Wallace, which I think lets this one down a bit. Something's off, but of course that changed over time. Which I wish I could say the same for, you know, the current voice of Kermit the Frog, but that's another story. Should we cover Muppets content? I don't know, I've never tried puppetry as a video prompt. Up next, the BAFTA acceptance speech. In terms of ranking this lower, this one is probably an easy target, because to be fair to the Aardman team, this was literally just a bonus clip to thank the National Television Awards for their award. This was a victory lap of a short. It didn't need to be a fully rounded thing. Wallace says thanks for the trophy, makes a lame joke that probably got crickets when played out to the live audience.
That's very important, Pooch.
And then Feathers steals the trophy to end it off, which feels like most clips around this one coming out. The end. They probably didn't have a great amount of time to make this one. Literally just a thank you, so I won't give it too hard a time. But I can't really rank it any higher. Following that, the PG Tips advert. Are you personally aware of PG Tips? Because it is a British staple in our culture. We were bombarded with adverts by this company. And since they are so integral to the British experience, it seems inevitable that Wallace and Gromit would do an ad for a tea brand at some point. It just lines up. Alas, we have this commercial here, which was actually a tie-in promotion for Wallace and Gromit Curse of the Were-Rabbit in 2005. Forget crazy sugary drinks and McDonald's connections, Wallace and Gromit went for tea as their tie-in company. This also explains why we have both Lady Toddington and the anti-pesto van in this one. That being said, even for someone as eclectic as Wallace, this invention just makes absolutely no sense, does it?
I'll just make sure it's at optimum drinking temperature.
To which Wallace's chair launches him upside down, and antics of him squashing the cakes and whatnot ensues. It's classic Wallace and Gromit slapstick, but I just have no idea what the concept of this invention even was. Why did he need to be turned upside down to find the optimum drinking temperature? Is there a science expert that could explain that one for me? Bonus points if you're British. Following that, Google Hangout. In some ways, this is exciting to have a crossover with all of the characters. I'm pretty sure this is one of the only times this has ever happened with Aardman, if not the only time. However, my brain just can't get over thinking the fact that the chickens would not be talking to Wallace in this universe. You know, they're a little bit too far apart in that world. But it's just a nice little segment of a collection of Aardman characters talking to each other via Google Hangout.
Hello there, you two.
Ginger.
Kind of weird as well to see Wallace handling something so high-tech. He is kind of meant to be in like a 1950s bubble. You know, he has a very old-school, grungy approach to modern tech. Ah, well. Also, advertiser considered here, this is probably the most evil company that Wallace and Gromit have associated themselves with, so we'll have to mark them down for that. I say, being so fully engulfed in the Google everything. But that just comes with a contract with YouTube. But hey, they did literally take out the subheading in their catchphrase titling brand "Don't Be Evil," so that's always a good sign. Next up, Science Museum. Another interesting early chapter in the Ben Whitehead taking over voice duty. I actually don't mind it so much here, despite how it clearly sounds not much like Wallace at all.
Put your thinking caps on, and who knows?
Though I think re-watching these earlier clips is actually great in appreciating how much he's actually developed his performance by the time we got to Vengeance Most Foul. It's weird to think that over time the muscles in vocal cords can just change through doing Wallace so often. And here, branding-wise, it's a pretty good match. Wallace and Gromit promoting the Science Museum. It's very straightforward in terms of one solid beat for a joke before Wallace says that younger viewers can be an inventor like him. But I like what it represents in using these characters as role models in this capacity. It's not really the kind of thing I remember seeing in much of the rest of the animated world. Somewhat. I'll certainly take it over Google, you know? Jules' Christmas ad. Now, Wallace and Gromit do have a weird link to Christmas in the UK. I said earlier that they're always playing the documentary on loop, but actually, all the movies, except for Curse of the Were-Rabbit, was first broadcast on Christmas Day here. I mean, apparently, Vengeance Most Foul just last year achieved viewing figures of over 21 million on Christmas Day. So there's little surprise that they are often hired for specifically Christmas ads. And it's that time again now. Christmas is 2 months long. I think the inevitable warmth from these gives it that edge over some of the others, and there is something about the physical stop-motion set that more sincerely delivers that Christmas iconography than some of the more basic Christmas ads you get.
Fairy lights.
That being said, this one's interesting as it doesn't inherently advertise the products of the company that commissioned it. That being British clothing company Jules, which is presumably a little bit too upmarket for me to have ever heard of. A lot of UK Christmas ads do go for essentially a short film. I mean, I'm sure everyone's heard of the whole John Lewis ad that makes a new attempt to make people cry every year. That doesn't really happen here though, as instead, Wallace has an invention I'm sure most of us wish we had, that being a Christmas tree that automatically appears instead of having to be brought down from the attic, as well as Gromit as an angel being held up by, is that a noose? Definitely on the sillier side. Gromit then magics a pile of presents onto Wallace and that's it. Again, straightforward couple of fun jokes, and I kind of prefer its simplicity over the more abrasive advertising style that doesn't fit the duo's vibe as well. Next up, bully-proof vest. Finally, our first of the actual cracking contraptions on this shorts list. It's interesting because the cinematography and the tone of the first part is impeccable. It aligns well with the Alfred Hitchcock vibes of the original shorts, and evidently a good test run for employing animators for Curse of the Were-Rabbit. But I think what marks this down for me from the rest here is that Wallace is particularly brutal to Gromit here. I guess the joke here is that it's a bully-proof vest, yet Gromit clearly leaves this one as the bullied. And it's at least executed with Wallace's signature obliviousness that there's an issue in the first place.
That final test was conclusive, eh, Gromit?
But it just feels like Gromit actually getting punched into a wall, leaving him with a black eye, is a little extreme for Wallace's unawareness. You punched your dog with a boxing glove, buddy. And sure, slapstick is commonplace in this series, but I think Wallace and Gromit went a little too Tom and Jerry this time around. Renault ad. This is perhaps, I mean, look at it, the oldest in the commercial catalog. And like the better efforts, beyond the Renault car being in it, it does just work as its own short separately. Of course, the car passes their testing with flying colors, but it feels authentically Wallace and Gromit. Initially, you think Wallace has gone to new levels of savagery, starting the car whilst Gromit's still in front of it, and I was gonna mark it down for crossing that line of Wallace being too mean to Gromit again, but then the twist kinda redeems that. So it's definitely above the bully vest. Otherwise, I like the simple reveal gag, and I like that the spinning pond's incorporated into it, this time with the Renault driving over. So up next, BBC One Christmas Idents 2004. Okay, so this one is a little bit of a rogue one, as it's literally just a series of silent looping sequences for the BBC. Nonetheless, culturally, these idents between TV shows are just a staple of Christmas and are there to create that staple festive feeling of nostalgia and warmth. And to that degree, I feel like Wallace and Gromit really fits the bill. And just like the festive commercials, the Aardman look with the festive iconography just feels more genuine than manufactured. Though I always think with these kind of adverts, it's weird because you assume they're all filmed in the summer or produced in the summer. So I also always imagine these festive sets to be bakingly hot because it's not actually the right season yet when they're made. This was all building to the UK broadcast of Vengeance Most Foul as well, so having these shorts introduce Norbot ahead of time was also really effective in its own way, little teasers and previews. There's also just some fun Easter eggs in there. Love that for the old brain. Like the model train from Wrong Trousers making a comeback in one, alongside the models of A Grand Day Out rocket on the wall, as also featured in Wrong Trousers. Feathers McGraw also features in every single one in some capacity. His ice sculpture features in 2 of them, whilst in the living room ident, he's pictured on the Christmas card on the side of the frame. They're very simple, but they do their job really well, and I just really like them. Hence, I've included them here. They also did some idents in 2008 for A Matter of Loaf and Death, but it's literally Wallace and Gromit trying to ski round a circle with the BBC One logo, and that's kind of it. Nostalgic for me though, anyway, but maybe not worth officially including on this list. It's an honorable mention. Following that, the Soccer-matic. Now this back and forth works a whole lot better than Gromit ending up with a black eye. We don't often get competitiveness between these characters, but it does show itself here. Wallace's logic is particularly absurd here. I can't score a goal, so I'm gonna bring in my invention that kicks the ball for me. But then Gromit gets the win here by matching that absurdity with his inflatable goalkeeper kit. It may very well be the pettiest that these two have ever gotten with each other, and I love that.
My Preston North End Soccer-matic, Gromit.
I prefer a bunch of the other stuff over this, but it's still a lot of fun. Following that, Gilco commercial Japanese ad. So now, here's a piece of Wallace and Gromit media that feels completely different to everything else out there, because this is a Japanese commercial. And from the way it's shot to, obviously, the music, to the fact that the whole thing is playing at 2x speed, you can really tell it's for that market. It's really interesting to see these cinematographic differences. With a pre-spin-off Shaun the Sheep front and center, this is a commercial for the Spanish dessert Glico. Glico? They didn't say it in the ad. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I'm gonna go Glico. Literally, while I'm making this video, the teaser for Wallace and Gromit crossing with Barbor also just released. So, I guess we'll add that to the list soon. I'm literally mid-making this. I guess they wanted to give it a European tone for it, even if they went for the wrong country. So in the end, it's a Japanese ad for a Spanish dessert made with British animation. What a wild ride. Glad to see they've gone global. Also though, one small thing I really appreciate is the seamlessness between the live action shots of the dessert and the animation. And actually, despite the bizarre speed that the footage is playing at, I actually really like the extremes of Shaun trying to get to Wallace and Gromit in time to have the dessert. If anything, the speed of it helps create Shaun's sense of urgency, making the switches from bicycle to Tarzan-style Vine all the funnier. Weirdly, it feels like a precursor to the solo version of that character, because like this is just a midpoint from his relatively straightforward character in A Close Shave to the more fleshed out version of the character later. So in its own weird way, it represents an interesting part of that character's history, and I genuinely think it's one of the stronger commercial efforts. In fact, the advert that just intruded us maybe is not quite as good as this one. But you know what? I'll plug it in here, because I think it's very simple. Hey there, thank you for making it to the halfway mark of this video. Come subscribe if you haven't already for more spin-off content. We're bringing the series back. Ironically, I was planning to do a Christmas one next month, but that's what Wallace and Gromit's currently turning into, so what can you do? Either way, thanks for getting this far in, and let's get back to the second half. But you know what? I'll plug it in here, because I think it's very simple. So this one that just popped up is Wallace and Gromit mixing with Barbour. Once again, another upmarket clothing brand that I'm apparently not very well connected to. I mean, I guess when it is stop motion animation you're paying for, it must be pretty damn expensive to do. Even still, this one plays out like another classic commercial. I think it covers all of the standard beats, and for it being 2025 and you've already seen half of great short content from Wallace and Gromit, I think this one's a little bit generic. The idea, of course, comes back in with Wallace coming with an invention, this time a bot of some kind that can wrap gifts, unwrap gifts, and pop a cracker with you, taking out all of the fun social elements of Christmas. Dude doesn't even want to unwrap his own present when he gets to it. Still, the slapstick of the one gunshot going off is great and fun, but beyond that, it's very, very standard.
Sorry, Gromit.
Right down to them getting the same gifts for each other. To see that the present is a scarf, you know, it's only fine. The advert then goes a little bit further with the classic British humor of having the robot then go to unwrap and undress Wallace himself. And it's like, yeah, okay, fine. Fine, only fine. We'll be putting it in here only because it interrupted the Glyco advert, and if I took this bit and put it earlier, it would get a little bit confusing on the timeline here. But I think it's a good representation of the very classic standard thing. Sorry, I'm cleaning my glasses at the minute. There we go. That can be your foundational basis of what a standard commercial goes like. So moving on, let's go to the DFS advert. So, for the international audience, all you need to know about DFS is they are the UK's biggest provider of sofas, which is kind of self-evident here. I've put these higher as they do function as their own 1 minute short with a solid gag. Sure, it still ends with the nice DFS sofa being installed, it's literally advertising, but there's an extra layer to these than just, look at this nice product, Gromit. Each one also introduces a new Wallace invention, so they're almost like a commercial expansion of the Cracking Contraptions shorts. These are definitely amongst the more fun for Wallace and Gromit fans as well. One featuring the sheep from A Close Shave, and the other being one of the only other appearances of Lady Tottington.
Do something! Save yourself!
Though I will say, something a bit weird about the sheep is that they have the designs of the normal sheep, but are scaled to the size of Shaun, which is interesting. That doesn't take away from their ad though, which has a fun bit of slapstick as Wallace attempts to make his own extendable sofa, which doesn't quite go to plan and ends up with being fired against the window. I'm feeling a little bit of a trend here with that latest 2025 one, but I think a sofa's more interesting than a scarf. Sorry, Barbour. Barbour? I don't even know the brand, how to pronounce it. This does lead to the overdone squashed face against the window trope, but the execution here, I'd argue, is at least particularly funny in this case. As for the Lady Tottington one, the big dub first off is that they actually got Helena Bonham Carter back as the voice just for this commercial. And I'm saying these things cost a lot of money. I mean, for the production value in general here, I guess I just didn't realize what deep pockets they must have at DFS and all of these brands, but it makes a lot of sense. They are the biggest in the country. This time, Wallace has invented a full-on sofa-making contraption, the Sofa-matic. And apparently the franchise's wealthiest resident opted for this route, as opposed to buying a more conventional way. I mean, hey, I don't know what Wallace's fee is, but I can't imagine he'd charge a lot when he's the guy who very publicly changes his business every few years. Anyway, the Sofa-matic produces a somewhat uncomfortable looking sofa, despite the foot massager that pops out, and Gromit ushers them over to, you guessed, DFS, highlighting the company's handmade approach compared to Wallace's get the machine to do everything approach, which does a good job of justifying the Wallace and Gromit tie-in. The message is clearly delivered in a natural and unforced way, which just seems like good marketing to me. And if you look closely at the end title card, Wallace and Totty are getting particularly close with that foot massage. Finally, this trilogy would not be complete without a Christmas sale ad. The sheep are back for this one, and this time forming a euphonium musical instrument, where big mechanical fingers prop each sheep to bleat a Christmas tune. In the real world, that's animal cruelty, but the sheep seem fine here. There's actually a pretty dark Monty Python sketch like this, involving some mice and a mallet. I'll leave you to work out where that one goes. Anyway, this one's a bit more straightforward. but with a cute ending. Wallace and Gromit are going along with the strange sheep caroling device, but Gromit's getting cold. And so, as I think we all would if Wallace was shivering at our doorstep, the nice family let them in for a cup of tea and a blanket. The world really would be a better place if it was like Wallace and Gromit. I think overall, these feel like a complete effort that both work as commercials and full minute Wallace and Gromit shorts, which also playfully reprise characters from the series in a low-key but fan-pleasing way. Maybe I just want more Wallace and Gromit references in my Wallace and Gromit adverts. Up next, the Turbo Diner, one of the 2 cooking-based ones. I've ranked the first one higher, but I do appreciate that this one starts with the aftermath of the robot chef's head. For this one, we have some hilarious incidents of why did he add that when it comes to Wallace's decision with this design? Namely, having a mechanism that cuffs him and Gromit to their seats by their arms and legs whilst the contraption prepares their meal. It's certainly a choice, as is using a flamethrower as a candle lighter. That's a highlight for me. The big joke here is that this invention can produce a full gourmet banquet, yet runs on a coin slot meter. I mainly put the others above this one because it's just a bit more of the straightforward invention introduced, invention goes wrong format, which is the MO of these shorts, but I still really like this one. I just think the other examples have something else to offer with their outcome, or offer us something else from Wallace and Gromit as characters. I'd argue the other inventions are also more pleasing to watch over this one, where you just have this giant static vat that then miraculously reveals a large dinner. I do like that it's a mystery of how it really works, but I just think the animation of the other inventions give them the edge. A static bronze rectangle over a table just doesn't have that much to offer on that front. Though I do enjoy how bleak the ending feels as the candle goes out and they're just cuffed to the furniture in the dark. We all know that if this wasn't an Aardman short, this would be how they die. Up next, N-Power commercials. Now, the N-Power ads are definitely amongst the stronger Wallace and Gromit commercials. Just the setup in one of them of Gromit stoking a Titanic-style furnace just so Wallace can have a bath is so inherently funny to me. And the thing with any visual gag in Wallace and Gromit is that it hits twice as hard because it's backed up with a full physical model that the production team have had to make. So if Gromit's fueling a furnace, a fully built model furnace will be on screen. It's just way more impactful than something done with CGI that way. I think you've just got to appreciate the achievement of Aardman's stronger commercial efforts in actually making them genuinely entertaining as shorts as well. Plus, once again, we have Wallace finding yet another excuse to be naked. What is with that guy? At least they have the bravery to go fully naked this time around.
Excuse me, suds.
Gotta love that that's just in a broadcasting commercial. The other one focusing on electricity monitors, which I think were pretty new when this one was revealed, being framed as a horror-themed short, obviously pretty relatable. Even the fact that it's called Revenge of the Killer Watts is the exact sort of almost funny pun we love to see in our Wallace and Gromit media. The gothic look and tone of the short, much like Bully-Proof Vest, I really like. The fact that Wallace is using a tower of analog TVs as his widescreen TV as well is just so absolutely on brand. Plus, if anyone needs to be monitoring their energy usage, it's this Joker right here. No wonder all his businesses disappear every few years. This guy's committing fraud with the amount of electricity bill motivated bankruptcies he's claimed. Moving on, a Christmas card-o-matic. The next edition of add-o-matic to a regular word. As the title suggests, this is Wallace's mechanism for making Christmas cards, with his staple approach of making a relatively easy to obtain goal massively overcomplicated. I guess the idea is that this is yet another business Wallace is dabbling in, and he'll be selling these images of Robin Gromit. Whilst a familiar layout for these shorts, I do like the twist of all of the Robins having a Christmas party outside after this line.
You'd never get a scene like that. Not in a month of Sundays.
And just the fact that Wallace will produce a contraption of this scale just to make some Christmas cards. Love that. The Snoozatron. There's some fun details in this one, as we have another instance for Wallace's comfort at Gromit's expense. You gotta feel for the guy, as it's clear from the other details of the Snoozatron that it's not beyond Wallace to have just had an entire mechanical or dummy sheep. Yet he still opts to have an alarm in Gromit's room to go off at 3 in the morning. That's terrible. What I love in this one are small bits of the character animation, like the bags under Gromit's eyes. Seems like such a simple thing to add, usually, yet it's possibly one of the better realized expressions of tiredness I've seen on an animated character, let alone claymation. They also did a decent job of it with Mr. Incredible in The Incredibles 2, but I don't really like that movie. Gromit being a completely silent character too, you have to make everything he's feeling visually explicit, and this is just a great showcase of that. And throughout this short, it's just hilarious to see how done he looks, right up to him putting that sheep costume on. Considering we've seen the sheep regularly turn up in this universe, that must just add insult to injury for Gromit. He could have just used one of them. And despite the fact he's being, once again, completely inconsiderate towards his dog, I can't help but admit that Wallace being handed his teddy bears, kinda cute. It's a fun one. Very well done. The 525 Cracker Van, a vacuum cleaner that detects cracker crumbs. So, this one's a particularly interesting time capsule for 2002, when a robotic vacuum cleaner felt like a thing of the future. Of course, Wallace was ahead of the curve with the Cracker Van, which seems to only have the capacity to clean up crackers. In any case, he's given this vacuum cleaner both a laser focus detector for crackers and a sharp set of teeth, so what could possibly go wrong?
Help, Gromit! It's gone crackers!
It's very much another Wallace makes invention, invention goes wrong format, but I give this one extra points for the style of its western climax. Wallace and Gromit shine when cinematic camera techniques are applied to their benign domestic environments, so you can see the appeal of this one. And just those simple actions and animation that must actually be so difficult to pull off, like Gromit flipping the cracker through his fingers. These animators, man. Up next, the telescope. Now this one feels like a precursor to the Aardman documentary shorts, but I definitely prefer this one. A perfect showcase of Wallace's strange logic. That being a TV that comes to you to press the button so you don't have to get up, because there's no other device that could alleviate that situation. However, the timing of the reveals are key, as we have this elaborate system of firing the tennis ball from a catapult in the armchair into a photo frame, which then activates this mechanism to go through the motions first. And then, when he changes the channel, we get the reveal of the remote.
Oh, that's just the ticket.
It's just perfect. And considering the ambiguous analog time period that Wallace and Gromit exists in, faintly 1950s, you could have even bought into them not actually having a remote up to that point, making the reveal all the more funny. It just works so much better for me when the goes wrong beat stems from Wallace's moronic choices as a character, as opposed to just Wallace makes invention malfunctions.
I think I've bent me tube.
Following that, the Snowmanatron. I think this is definitely one of the better examples of Wallace's ignorance to the misfortune of Gromit, as we see so many times in the main movies. It's definitely one of the better shorts for showcasing Gromit's character in a series that revolves so much around Wallace making inventions for his own convenience. Don't get me wrong, Wallace still has an invention that makes a snowman for him. This short very much still adheres to that formula, but having Gromit make a detailed sculpture of Wallace only for Wallace's invention to knock it over in place for a basic manufactured snowman sums up their dynamic just to a T. It's the precursor to Gromit's vibrant and well-cared-for garden in Vengeance Most Foul being mown to a generic one-note one by Norbert. It's that kind of beat distilled into this short. Wallace also properly gets his just desserts in this one, with the very same contraption knocking the snow off the roof onto him, and in turn recreating the destroyed sculpture. I don't even mind Wallace's lame punchline in this one.
I thought that snowman was abominable.
The Auto Chef. I don't know how best I can explain the high ranking of this one, beyond the fact I find the Robot Chef really funny. That'll do. The look of the thing, the voice, it just gets me.
Scrambled eggs, eh, lad?
In a short space of time, they managed to fit a lot of gags. Gromit knowingly putting the coat on before anything's gone down, only for it mainly to land in his face anyway. Wallace having 2 fried eggs flung into his eyes. Hot tea going projectile. It's just a nice bit of chaotic slapstick comedy. And I can't help but notice if there's a few innuendos coming out of the robot as well.
More stuffing, madam.
It is literally just Wallace invents invention malfunctions, and nothing much else to it, so I am kind of just breaking my own rules here, but it just makes me laugh. I think it's the funniest of the bunch. And then just this.
Knickers.
Sometimes the simple things are the best at the end of the day. It's also in my headcanon now that all of the robots in the franchise were eventually leading to Norbot, which leads us nicely into the next one, Shopper 13. Our very best on the list. I think this one captures Wallace best as a character. In all of these cracking contraption shorts, the overriding theme is of course Wallace making inventions for straightforward tasks that he can't be bothered to do, yet this one matches the brief the best. Quite simply, Wallace has invented a shopping basket that collects the cheese itself, so he doesn't have to go to the shops. The joke being that he also had to build a NASA-style mission control unit in their house, making it a lot more complicated than just going to the shops would be. It's interesting as well that this was made before home shopping deliveries were a big thing. And do you think that'd be a sort of commentary on it? I mean, I know a lot of places now that you can literally get a robot to deliver your shopping for you, so this is just aged perfectly. The execution as well, cutting between the trolley and Wallace getting stressed in mission control. I can see why the filming techniques were so important in getting the vibe for Wallace and Gromit when training the animators, as it is a big part of the style. I'm just saying the team who worked on this one caught that the best. You need the cinematic style to emphasize how serious Wallace takes this little trolley getting his cheese, which we never see the trolley pay for, by the way, so I guess he should be pretty tense about theft. It really is Wallace's character and the choices he makes in this that positions this one particularly strongly for me. It really just gets that rule of Wallace, which is he will go as far as he can in making a contraption to do something for him over just doing it himself. Because even as the trolley falls over the final hurdle, rather than just walking a few steps outside, Wallace does this.
Gromit, we'll have to launch the probe.
Yep, a pre-series Shaun the Sheep, who of course just starts eating it. I mean, I don't really know what he expected to come out of this one. What did he expect the damn sheep to do here? Not everyone's built with the brain of Gromit. Again though, very silly, but I especially like this one, and I'd wager it's the best showcase of Wallace as a character. It's also the longest, so maybe that helps. And so now, while I've at least been talking for an hour straight, we can now finally put an end and say that is our full ranking of all of the Wallace and Gromit spin-off shorts and side media. You could probably come to expect there are way more other examples in some places, typically way smaller, like more of the BBC idents and stuff. But as a nice little collection for somewhat mostly Christmas, but also a lot of general global universal stuff, that is our ranking officially of the best and worst of Aardman's Wallace and Gromit content. So for now, my name's been Daz. Thank you very much for reaching the end of this video. Tell me your thoughts. What's your favorite Wallace and Gromit short? Where do you rank that new 2025 one? And were you aware of that old Glyco Japanese advert? Let me know how to pronounce it. I still don't know. I'd love to hear all of your thoughts and more, and I shall see you all in a little bit. Cheerio.